I'm sure you've heard the news. Welcome to Global Facts. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The tectonic plates of global politics are shifting beneath our feet, creating new rifts and unexpected alliances in a world that is more interconnected and more divided than ever before. As nations reassess their priorities and allegiances, the global order that once seemed unshakable is now in a state of flux. Turkey's bold move toward the BRICS bloc is sending shockwaves through the corridors of power in the West. This is not just a diplomatic gesture, it's a calculated pivot that challenges the very foundations of the Western-led international system, raising questions about the future of global leadership. For decades, Turkey stood as a cornerstone of NATO, a bridge between East and West, and a persistent, if sometimes frustrated, candidate for EU membership. Now, by openly courting an alternative bloc, Turkey is signaling a profound disillusionment with the promises and limitations of the post-Cold War status quo, and a willingness to chart its own course. The BRICS group, once dismissed as little more than an economic club, has evolved into a formidable counterweight to Western institutions. Its growing influence is attracting countries like Turkey, who are eager for a greater voice in shaping the rules of the global game, and less dependent on Western approval. This realignment could have far-reaching consequences, reshaping not only trade and security arrangements, but also the very balance of power that has defined the modern era. Brussels and Washington now face uncomfortable questions about their ability to maintain influence in a rapidly changing world, as their traditional alliances are tested like never before. The prospect of a NATO member joining a bloc that includes Russia and China is nothing short of seismic. Such a move could fracture long-standing alliances, undermine collective security, and trigger economic retaliation from the US and EU, with ripple effects felt across the globe. What we're witnessing is not just another headline, but the opening of a new chapter in modern history, one where old allegiances are questioned, new partnerships are forged, and the future world order hangs in the balance, waiting to be rewritten by those bold enough to seize the moment. BRICS began as a catchy acronym in 2001, coined by a Goldman Sachs economist to describe the rising economic potential of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. At first, it was simply a label for emerging markets expected to shape the future of the global economy. But what started as a financial shorthand soon took on a life of its own, as these countries recognized the power of collective identity. Over the years, BRICS quickly evolved into a political force as its members. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa sought a greater voice on the world stage. They began holding annual summits, coordinating policies, and presenting a united front on issues ranging from trade to climate change. This transformation marked a shift from economic cooperation to a more ambitious geopolitical agenda. The creation of the new development bank in 2014 was a major milestone, signaling BRICS' intent to challenge the dominance of Western-led financial institutions, like the IMF and World Bank. The group's recent expansion to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the UAE, and Indonesia has transformed BRICS into a sprawling coalition representing much of the global south, amplifying its influence and diversity. United by a desire to challenge US and Western dominance, BRICS now offers an alternative vision for global governance. The bloc seeks to reform international institutions, promote multipolarity, and give a stronger voice to developing nations. Yet, despite these shared ambitions, BRICS remains a diverse group with internal rivalries and conflicting interests that often complicate its unity. Tensions, especially between China and India over border disputes, and Russia's growing economic isolation due to Western sanctions, frequently test the bloc's cohesion. These challenges highlight the difficulties of forging consensus among countries with different priorities and regional ambitions. Despite their ambitions to deepen cooperation, BRICS members still conduct more trade with Western countries than with each other. Economic ties to the West remain strong, making their collaboration both strategic and competitive, as each nation balances its own interests with the group's collective goals. The group's growing influence on global affairs is undeniable, but its internal divisions, competing interests, and deep economic links to the West mean that the future of BRICS remains uncertain, poised between promise and challenge as it seeks to redefine the world order. Turkey's quest to join Europe began over 60 years ago, driven by a desire to anchor itself in the West. Despite early optimism and sweeping reforms, Turkey's EU bid stalled over concerns about human rights, the Cyprus dispute, and cultural differences. The EU's offer of privileged partnership instead of full membership deepened Turkish disillusionment, fueling a sense of exclusion. This frustration, combined with rising national pride, has led Ankara to seek alternatives beyond Brussels. The fading dream of EU membership has set the stage for Turkey's historic pivot toward BRICS. As the doors to the European Union gradually closed, Turkey under President Erdogan began to chart a distinctly more independent and assertive foreign policy. No longer content to wait on the EU's doorstep, Ankara started to look eastward, forging new partnerships and deepening ties with Russia, China, and key players in the Middle East. This pivot was not just a reaction to European reluctance, but also a strategic move to diversify Turkey's alliances and increase its influence on the global stage. Erdogan's government saw opportunity in the shifting world order, aiming to position Turkey as a bridge between continents and a power in its own right. In 2025, Ankara made headlines by signaling serious interest in joining BRICS, the influential bloc of emerging economies. This move was both a calculated gesture to gain leverage in negotiations with the West and a genuine overture to the East. By pursuing BRICS membership, Turkey sought to demonstrate its willingness to play a larger role in global affairs, while also sending a message to its traditional allies that it had other options. Russia, eager to expand its influence and welcome new partners, quickly expressed support for Turkey's interest. However, other BRICS members were more cautious. The prospect of admitting a NATO member raised concerns about internal cohesion and the bloc's strategic direction. Some saw opportunity, while others worried about potential complications. Moscow offered Ankara a partner country status, a compromise that would allow for closer cooperation without full membership. But Turkey, determined to be seen as an equal, rejected the offer. Ankara insisted on full membership, unwilling to accept a secondary or symbolic role within the group. This diplomatic dance exposed the complex challenges facing both Turkey and BRICS. For Ankara, the path to the east is filled with geopolitical hurdles and questions about its long-term alliances. For BRICS, the decision is equally fraught. Can the bloc absorb a NATO ally without undermining its own unity and purpose? As one Brazilian diplomat summed it up, Turkey is NATO. Many have concerns about how that would work. The question of trust and alignment looms large, with some BRICS members openly skeptical about Turkey's intentions and the potential impact on the group's identity. Turkey's bold gambit has opened a new, uncertain chapter in its foreign policy, testing both its ambitions and the very nature of BRICS itself. The world is watching closely as Ankara navigates this delicate balancing act, seeking to redefine its place in a rapidly changing global landscape. The outcome remains far from certain, with both sides weighing the risks and rewards. For now, the future of Turkey's eastern pivot, and its potential BRICS membership, hangs in the balance. India's fierce opposition is the biggest obstacle to Turkey's BRICS ambitions. Turkey's alliance with Pakistan and support for its stance on Kashmir have long irritated New Delhi, but recent allegations of Turkish military support for Pakistan have escalated tensions. After a deadly attack in Kashmir, India accused Turkey of supplying drones and advisors to Pakistan, hardening its resolve to block Ankara's entry. India retaliated economically, targeting Turkish businesses and aviation partnerships. Public statements by Indian military leaders and Modi's visit to Cyprus signaled a deepening rift. For now, India's veto has dashed Turkey's hopes for full BRICS membership. Turkey's BRICS flirtation has alarmed Brussels and Washington, exposing the limits of Western influence. The EU's leverage, promises of membership, has faded, forcing a rethink of its enlargement strategy and security architecture. If Turkey, a key NATO ally, aligns with a bloc containing Russia and China, it could fracture Western unity and complicate defense planning. In the US, Trump's administration has threatened harsh economic retaliation against countries joining BRICS, including sweeping tariffs. For Turkey, joining BRICS risks losing access to Western markets and security cooperation. The ripple effect is forcing the West to confront the consequences of stalled integration and shifting alliances. The stakes for the global order have never been higher. For Turkey and others, joining BRICS offers access to new financing, trade, and a chance to shape global economic rules. The bloc's push to reduce reliance on the US dollar and promote local currencies is appealing for countries seeking monetary sovereignty. But the risks are immense. Turkey's economy is deeply tied to Europe, and alienating the EU could devastate trade and investment. US threats of tariffs and secondary sanctions loom large, especially for countries dealing with sanctioned BRICS members like Russia and Iran. Intra-BRICS trade remains modest compared to trade with the West, making the economic calculus a perilous balancing act. A pivot to BRICS could open new doors, but risk slamming shut far larger ones in the West. The decision is fraught with uncertainty and high stakes. For now, the rewards remain tantalizing, but the dangers are just as real. Analysts agree the BRICS expansion signals a fundamental shift, but its outcome is unclear. BRICS is attractive less for its unity than for the West's perceived exclusivity and failure to accommodate rising powers. The bloc is a coalition of the excluded, but internal rivalries and lack of a unified doctrine limit its power. Admitting a NATO member like Turkey would stretch BRICS' identity to the breaking point. Many in Europe admit the EU's slow, indecisive approach has created a vacuum for Russia and China to fill. The world is moving toward a multiplex order, overlapping alliances, shifting loyalties, and complex coalitions. In this new landscape, countries like Turkey will pursue flexible, pragmatic diplomacy to maximize their autonomy. We stand at a turning point as Turkey's BRICS overture symbolizes a world in flux and the decline of Western dominance. The evolution of BRICS and Turkey's disillusionment with the EU highlight the challenges of a multipolar era. Fierce opposition from India and wary responses from the US and Europe reveal the immense complexities of realignment. The risks, fractured alliances, economic warfare, and deepening divides are profound. This is a wake-up call for the West to rethink its strategies and for aspiring nations to weigh new partnerships against old ties. The future will not be defined by neat blocks but by unpredictable shifting alliances. Whether Turkey bridges the gap to BRICS or retreats, its actions have already changed the global conversation. The game has changed, and every nation must now decide how it will play.